What is up, Facebook land? Welcome to another episode of the Two Dates and a Dash podcast. I'm your host, Matt Cubbler. Before I introduce Daniel Puder to you, I want to first dedicate a show as I always do. I'm happy enough to announce that today's my wife's birthday. So today is the show is dedicated to my beautiful, patient, loving, strong, and dedicated Lauren. She is the reason why I'm able to do all this crazy stuff that I do, because she keeps the home moving and staying in complete. We lost Daniel there. Hopefully we keep Daniel coming back on. But I'm dedicating the show to Lauren because she is the single most important person in my world. So the podcast, where can you find the podcast? The podcast can be found anywhere. iTunes, Stitcher, you name it, you can find it. That's where the podcast is found. While we're still waiting on Daniel's video to come in, I want to give you a little history on Daniel. Daniel is former MMA fighter. He was on, I don't know if you guys are WWE fans, but he was on SmackDown's competition Tough Enough, which was for up-and-coming wrestlers that want to get in, and it's like $1 million competition. Having a little technical difficulty here with Daniel again, so let's see if we can get that back on. He was on that show. He won $1 million prize for that. So yeah, he's done the fight game amazingly well, in the wrestling game, and then he became an entrepreneur. He started going around doing. He started this My Life, My Power Institute, where he's creating schools for kids to have a different way of learning, empowering them to go out and be their very best and give them the tools to do that, mostly in impoverished areas. He goes around and speaks all over the place to people. He is a very talented speaker, and I wish we would have had him on here longer, but that doesn't seem to be working out today. So we will continue on here for a little bit and see if we can get him back on, and we'll go from there. Monday, I also have a podcast on Monday, just so we're at least keeping this thing, me talking here. Monday is Howard Brown, former Villanova basketball player, Pottstown resident, activist, community activist, fundraiser, connector. He's a great guy. And then next Wednesday, you'll have me on the 24th being interviewed by my good buddy, John Kane. Unfortunately, I don't think this is working real well. And we're going to try plan B. So stand by. I'm going to shut. Oh, is he back? Let's see. There he is. He's back.
What's happening, bro?
We got you.
Sweet.
I just got doing your intro. So why don't we fast forward and say, Daniel Puder, welcome to the show.
Thank you, brother. Appreciate it. And happy birthday to your wife.
Thank you. I see you just got back from India.
Yes.
How was that?
Amazing.
Did you meet the Dalai Lama?
No, he was sick actually 2 days before I went out there. So my commitment is to the school that we're partnering with out in India. So what's interesting is the Dalai Lama I was with the Prime Minister of Tibet, and that morning before the Prime Minister, I had breakfast with 120 lamas, and I got to buy them breakfast. We had this awesome, amazing breakfast, and I got to serve them breakfast, which was really cool. So some other really cool stuff happened. It's interesting when you go to meet one lama and you get to meet 120 llamas.
That's pretty cool. I mean, I don't know a whole lot about the culture over there. I have a couple of friends who are Indian and live here, but I've never been to India itself. But heard both good and bad things. But it's a class system over there. I know there's some issues with that as far as the way the Western people look at it.
Yeah, it's interesting how we look at it, right? Like we're always judging other people's worlds. We're like, oh, we have to go solve their problem. And it's interesting because do they want more? Yeah. Do they want some more technology? And, do they want plumbing? Sure. You know what I mean? They want some really cool stuff, some basic things that we have in a first world country. And I mean, they have the partner we have, Youth Buddhist Society of India, has a amazing school for 220 kids out there. 50 kids live there, and it's actually 226, I believe now. And they have a bunch that come in every single day. It costs $70 per kid to just have them at school for like 180 days, whatever it is a year. So it's less than 30 cents a day or whatever it comes out to be, 40 cents a day. It's unbelievable to be able to see what's possible in our country. We're spending $7,000 a year per kid in school. So it's interesting to be able to see the difference in the housing there. They sleep on the ground. I mean, it's super basic, right? But at the end of the day, the kids get an amazing human education to be able to develop them as an amazing human, not just teach them information. So I think what we're doing in our private school system is on the right path, because we're seeing what other countries are doing to develop the human. Plus, we're giving them the Western side of it too. So it's an Eastern and Western, mixture of creating amazing humans, but also giving them the knowledge and skill sets and the technology and everything else that the Western world is giving them too.
That's awesome. I think it's commendable that you're taking the stuff that you've developed here in the United States and taking it across to areas that need it, just like the inner cities here in our country need more. It's really no different in the want and need category when you go to countries like India.
Yeah.
So we tried to do the show before a couple weeks back, and we had some technical difficulties, and we're redoing this. So you're aware of how the show starts. I don't have a plan. I don't do a whole lot of research other than what's on your bio. And I want to dig deeper into who Daniel Puder is and how he got to where he is. So the one question I lead with is always, who is, and in this case, Daniel Puder?
I'm amazing, loving, authentic, committed. So the idea is we can talk about, I mean, I got titles of the yin yang. You can look at my LinkedIn on that, or my bio. I think that, there's a lot of the human doing these days, not the human being. So who do we show up as human beings? How do we make impact in this world? And how do we create, the significance that breeds that success, so that we can create fulfillment? I think that I get to live an amazing life. I get to travel around the world. I get to have fun. And we're building a school system where we have an emotional intelligence training company. I got a branding agency. So I get to have a lot of fun in different worlds. And I'm really good at what I do. And we've created a really good process and systems to be able to get real results that other people. I just had a billionaire CEO in New York about 2 months ago tell me what I'm doing is impossible. And he's coming down, I think it's in the end of this month or early next month. And I'm going to show them what we do. And it's just interesting on how we can transform a human and help them see what's possible in their own life and their own belief system.
Let's talk about that. I know that there's many different rabbit holes we can go down first. But I want to talk about the education system, because I'm intrigued by the school that you've created, the institute, how My Life, My Power Institute has come to being. Because to me, with my passion in the youth mentoring world, I'm curious to hear more about what your program is doing, what your plan is doing, and what the long-term plan is for these institutes. Because I think it's, in today's world, we have so much issues with public school systems, and the Catholic school system has their problems, and the charter school systems have their problems. No one seems to really have their finger on the pulse of what's needed per se for the kids. And I'm curious what your take on that is with what you're doing.
Yeah, so in our country, we developed our educational system based around the farming system. So we take off summers so the kids could help work the crops. And I think that was a great system, a long time ago. And we learned, the idea was to learn information so that we could create industry, we could create management positions, we could create technology companies. So we needed to, whether it's, becoming lawyers or doctors or whatever it was understanding the content so we could become smarter humans. And what's great is we're super smart humans now, compared to a lot of before, compared to how much information we knew in the past. We know a lot more today. We have the right technology. And so it's interesting to be able to see where, for instance, our country is going versus, let's say, Japan or Mexico or China or India. And so I've been to all these places. I haven't been to China yet, but we have a partner there. We're working a deal right now, and they go to school 12 hours a day in China. I mean, by I think it's like seventh or eighth grade, sixth, seventh, eighth grade, you take a test and they track you. Like they give you a track that you're going to go on. Like you're either going to be one thing or you're going to be another thing. So depending on your ability to take tests or your ability to, how fast you can learn. So it's pretty interesting to be able to see how some countries do it. I think in America we have a great platform with giving some kids some fun off in the summer and everything like that. But at the end of the day, it lowers test scores. It lowers learning ability. If we only teach people the ability to learn for 9 months, then we take off 2-3 months in the summer and half a month or a month in the winter, and then we have some spring breaks. We're not teaching necessarily the ability that learning should be all the time. We're just telling people just go learn when we tell you what to learn and how to learn it. So we're learning information to learn information, and it's not purpose or vision driven. So a lot of people think they know what they want to be, but most of my college students, even, they have in the past said, I wanted to be this, but then I figured out what it really was, or I graduated with this degree and I got out and I hate that job. So people switch degrees all the time. People have no clue, because why would you go invest? No entrepreneur in their right mind, no business owner wouldn't go invest, $50, $100, $200,000 in 4 years of their life to be able to go make $50,000 in a job that's never going to be able to give you, the ability to pay off your debt. Like this is some crazy stuff on how we're giving our kids huge loans, lots of debt, and they don't take accountability for taking on that type of debt. And so I'm looking at how do I create good humans, because we have a lot of smart humans now, but our humans are not resourceful as a generation. So today they're weak-minded and they're not resourceful, and they don't know themselves. So it's interesting to be able to see what we don't have and what we do have. What we do have is great. What we don't have isn't needed. So what we're doing with our private school system is we help the human become an amazing human. And then from there, they're passionate about something, whatever it is. And from there, when they have passion, they want to learn, they want to grow. So giving them a vision, helping them design their vision and a purpose is I believe one of the most valuable things to help a human create, because that's going to overpower their feelings and their circumstances. And when they also know about their emotional intelligence, their belief intelligence, from there, they're going to be able to go out into the world and have these circumstances and these feelings come up. They're going to know that it comes from past experiences, the past expectations, their beliefs, their subconscious, and they're going to be able to understand and clear it. And so it's just creating the most amazing humans in the world that then can function at the highest level, which any company, any partner, any organization, any city wants these people involved with their community.
Now, what age group does this start with for you guys? Is it a middle school program or is it K through 12? How does it run?
So specifically for our school, we're doing 6th through 12th grade. There's a couple other programs that we've developed that go kindergarten through 12th, kindergarten through college. Then we have our professional development side. We've trained law enforcement around the country. We've trained educators around the country. So we've trained parenting groups. And then now we're doing corporate side. So we have 3 kind of brands. We have our My Life, My Power, which is our nonprofit side, which is directly tied into our schools, which is MLMPI Preparatory Academy. And then we have My Life, My Power Institute, which is our for-profit for corporations. So the idea long-term is we'll be able to support the kids in our school. From there, with our nonprofit, we'll be able to support kids in local communities that need this, that don't go to our school. Because we want to support the public school system. We want to support charters. We want to support other private schools. We take the kids that are not wanted from other systems, and we help them see their value in life. And so what I find is the kids that go to our school are the most amazing kids in the world. They're so caring. They have huge hearts. They got drive. They want to do something with their life, and we help them with that platform to be able to create the results they want.
That's awesome. Now, how long has this been in effect? How long have you had the school program?
So nonprofit we've done for almost 9 years. The schools started building about 2 years ago, launched the first one last September. We have 46 kids now, and we're building 2 more right now. So about this time next year, we should have about 400 to 600 kids. And then next year we're launching 7 more. So we're gonna grow rapid now. Is really proving the concept out the first year, and now it's creating that growth.
Now, what is this a nationwide program you're trying to create? Is it a needs-based program where you see the need, you respond, or is this something where you want to put a My Life, My Power preparatory school in every community in the country?
Yeah, so I would. They'll be in specific states because of how the funding system works for private schools, because we're state funded through a scholarship or voucher system. I like the ability to go across country because, in Texas, in the middle of Austin, is one dynamic versus South Florida with 3 or 4 different languages, or communities coming together. So it's going to be a big difference on how we respond to different areas, how we impact and create that culture in different areas. So we definitely want to do it nationally. It's more of a proof of concept for what we're going to do over the next 31 years. So we have a 2050, we have a 31-year game plan till 2050 to be able to execute some very specific proof of concepts, data-driven results, with some policy shifts. And from there, we're going to be able to get some awesome results for the whole entire country. So we want to have about 1,000 schools and then impact a couple 100,000 kids per year. But then we want to impact also the public and private and charter and homeschool world too. So whatever we do, we're going to directly be able to solve some of their problems with taking some of the kids that maybe they don't have the resources or the training for. But we're also going to be able to train those communities too to do what we do. So it's a win-win all the way around.
I think it's a brilliant idea. I really do. I've been, for my entire life trying to figure out how to get kids to have that ability to understand who they are, what their purpose is, what their passion is, and an ability to go out and execute on that. And it's pretty cool to hear that you're doing that, and that you've done it in a way that is not only being done in one spot, but has the ability to be replicated and taken across the country, and when the time is right. So I think that's a brilliant idea. Well done.
Thanks. Yeah, next year I'm going back and forth for Ohio next year, Arizona, and Georgia. So it looks like we'll be in 3 more states with 7 schools, and that we're launching next year, and then we'll do 4 more in South Florida. It looks like. So I'm excited to go across country. Our biggest thing is we're looking for good humans across country that want to solve problems that are within the education system is great, or not within the education system, and that are amazing humans. If you don't want to have a growth mindset, don't show up. Like, you're not even going to get past the first day of our training. You're not even going to get onboarded. We have the culture we're building in our organization. You get to go through a training that is just amazing, and it weeds people out, because if people don't want to look at their stuff, become vulnerable, open, and really take accountability for everything in their life, it's kind of like if you break a leg, or if I break a leg, we're probably going to go to the hospital pretty quick. But if there's something mentally off, usually we won't go to a psychologist, psychiatrist, therapist, counselor, whatever it is. So it's interesting to be able to see that we're never taught to deal with emotions, or how we create emotions. We're taught to, men in America are taught to suck it up, be tough, and don't cry. But then it doesn't help us connect with, kids at the end of the day, or our families, or our wives, or girlfriends, or whatever it is, to be able to create real, connected, authentic results.
Yeah, it's a strange world we live in, and you brought up the male mystique of toughness. And I've worked in a tough field for the last 30 years, and from military, Army intelligence, and then SWAT and Air Marshal and all that stuff. And I have this sense of almost like a bravado by the fact that I've done all these tough things in my life. And one of the things that people have had a hard time wrapping their head around with me is that I go on stage when I speak and I cry every single time. Like I can't not cry. It's almost impossible for me to tell that story of my life without going back in time to when it happened and actually feeling it again, so that you, the audience, can feel it again. And it took some getting used to for some people to understand that, that especially when I've spoken in front of people that know me, that I'm going to cry, and that they're not used to seeing that because I have this tough guy bravado that I put up when I put on a uniform. So the world is changing in that regard. I think because of all the emotional intelligence training, because of the fact of there's so many speakers and podcasters now that are talking about emotions and how to deal with them and what causes them and how to utilize, anger and passion and joy and what all those emotions mean inside of you and how to utilize them. I think it's changing some, but you're right. It's not necessarily easy for a guy to let that go.
Yeah, I think we've created a society around like a therapeutic society about like, let's talk about your problems, not about solving the problem. Right. So what I've seen with different therapists and counselors, psychiatrists, psychologists, that world, just in general. I'm not saying every single person. My team that does it gets results. For instance, my personal therapist that I maybe talk to twice a year for an hour. He's a good friend of mine. He's more of a coach, a mentor. He tells people, like couples, we just couples therapy. He says, I'll give you a maximum of 9 months and I'm going to help you get to your solution. And a lot of people look at him and goes, what do you mean 9 months? What if we need you after that? He goes, you won't need me after that because of how I'm getting you ready for life. So it's interesting on how people can take ownership or how people want to just depend on somebody else. And I think we've created that society in our society. It's interesting, like Eastern world versus like the Western side over here. In India, a lot of people take accountability and they're mindful of their actions. And in America, we're not. And I think a lot of it's cultural, some of it's religion based, but it's very interesting to be able to see how we live our lives out here compared to the people I was just with. I mean, they take accountability for their stuff. They're responsible for their actions. So it's pretty awesome to see the difference.
Well, I commend you for everything, brother. This is what you're doing on that level, impacting, and I think that's the biggest world is how you're impacting on a daily basis, not only kids, but people that want to go out and help kids like you're doing. You're inspiring them and impacting them so that they can become prepared to do the things that you're asking of them on the corporate side, on the education side, through all that. So I appreciate what you're doing with that. Let's talk about how you got. So you didn't all of a sudden just wake up and said, "Shit, I'm going to open up a school." There's a backstory to you, and I know through watching a lot of your videos and obviously following you on social media that you started off with some learning disabilities as a kid, and you had some bullying issues growing up. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about growing up as a young man or young boy, and how the path you took through sport got you to where you are today.
Yeah. So in school, when I was in elementary school, I was at the 1 percentile for reading in the country. Not the highest 1%, the lowest 1 percentile. So if you can think that you have a learning challenge of reading at the lowest 1 percentile in the whole entire country, we have like 320 million people in the US. We have 55 million kids per se from like kindergarten to 12th grade. I was at the lowest 1 percentile, which that's not good when you come to letters. Now, I'm confused over this one thing still till today because they do the grading system A, B, C, D, F, and they skip E. So I thought that they were kind of like off on that a little bit. Maybe they should have been like at the 1 percentile. So at least I know my letters, right? And it was super challenging in school to read, to write, to learn how to spell, because everything's done in letters except for math, but still you got letters in that too. And if it wasn't for my parents, I wouldn't be where I'm at today. My mom used to help me after school every day, drill flashcards. My dad, they tried different things. They brought me to different training, coaches and everything else, to not only for sports, but for reading. They took like Linda Mood Bell they took me to Linda Mood Bell to learn my, to learn, reading, writing, spelling. Super challenging. And so what's really interesting and kind of why I have the energy and the passion for what I do today is because if it wasn't for them, I wouldn't be where I'm at today. And I'd be somewhere different. But if I didn't have a support system when I had those challenges, and I look at our system today, and at some point I got angry, I got pissed off, and I beat a kid up. And at 16 years old, I went to juvenile hall. And it was interesting to look at, because I showed up to school on a Friday in juvenile hall, and I was the fastest kid in the homework that they gave us. So I'm the slowest kid in my school, and I'm the fastest kid in juvenile hall. And something clicked that day, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I do not want to ever come back here again. And so it was really interesting to be able to see that difference on two different worlds, from what I was used to versus what the other side of the world was. So I got into fighting because I enjoyed hurting people. I was angry. I was pissed off. I was like, okay, so nobody ever sat down and taught me about emotional intelligence. My parents at one point, through this fight stuff, I had to go, I think, court ordered for like 10 therapy sessions. I don't remember anything about it, but I remember the dude. I remember sitting in his office. I can still see it. And that's not good. If he didn't make that big of an impression, obviously he didn't support me in a lot of growth. What I do remember is him talking to me, and I can still see it. But it's interesting because I'm not an auditory learner. I'm a visual and kinesthetic. And so basic professionals back in the day don't know how to relate and connect to certain kids. Like, they never tested me for how I learned. So how are they supposed to help me to the best of my ability? And so how we've developed what we've developed now, when we have kids that get in trouble, a lot of them are kinesthetics. A lot of them are, visual learners. And so we support them on how they learn to be able to learn. So it's interesting to be able to see how we do what we do and what's going on. And we love to be able to see that growth as fast as possible.
So you started fighting because you liked hurting people and you were pissed off. And you had this anger inside of you that you really didn't know how to channel. You didn't know what it all meant, but you realized that fighting made you feel better even short term. And then you realized you were probably pretty good at it, right?
Yeah.
And I boxed for 30 years. So I do get the feeling of I like getting punched and I enjoy punching. So it's kind of a drug. When I get smashed in the face, it actually wakes me up and makes me feel better. So I get that high that you get. When did you go from fighting because you enjoyed it and it was a way to handle your anger, to I think I can turn this into something that makes me money?
Probably around when I first started, I'm like, wow, these guys are actually making some money on this. So how do I do the same thing? It was really interesting to be able to see the pro athletes be able to connect, communicate, and really,
We'll get Daniel back on in 1 second. We lost his feed on what we're doing here, but we will get him back on shortly. I just think it's fascinating to hear his trek from being special, having learning disabilities, to being a fighter, to starting schools and helping kids become their very best in a different way than traditional educational systems. I just think it's such a unique and it's almost, I don't even say unique. It's almost it's so smart. It's stupid. Like, everybody should have thought of this. I don't understand why we didn't think of creating a pathway for certain kids, not every kid, but certain kids to learn more about themselves, learn more about who they are. Yo, brother.
Hey.
So you found out that we'll transition back. I just went a little soliloquy there. You found out that you can make money doing this, and you found out that there's a way for you to take something that was a passion in a sense that it at least made you feel better and turned it into something that you can use to make money.
Correct.
Exactly. What year was that?
2000 and probably 2000. It was probably 1999, 1998 when I was a junior in high school. Okay.
And when you started, did you do the amateur boxing or did you go straight into MMA?
So I did the amateur MMA side of it starting, and what I wanted to do was I wanted to create a platform. I was being mentored by Frank Shamrock, Javier Mendez, Bob Cook, and I had the most amazing coaches. What I was finding is I wasn't, so nobody ever actually sat me down and showed me how to create a career. They just said, go in the gym and train and fight. So for me at this point, even with my dad's company, he never sat me down. He's CEO, but it wasn't about building a business plan, life plan. Like that stuff wasn't big 20 years ago. So people are now mapping this out a little more. I mean, some people knew how to do it when they started a business or whatever else, but at the end of the day, it wasn't a big thing. So, we just jumped in there and I tried as much as I could. I worked my ass off and I found the right coaches, found the right mentors, went after other business owners and I just busted my butt to try to find the right answers on what I could do.
So you started the amateur, you did well in amateurs obviously, or you wouldn't have taken a pro route in MMA. Did you ever fight within the Bellators, the UFCs, the WECs, or any of that? Where did you find your first fighting, your pro fighting at? Was it in the underground circuit or was it in the more traditional circuits? You still got me there, Daniel? I might be losing you here. I see you, but I don't hear you. How you doing? Can you hear me, brother? Lost him again. We're going to get him back on. I promise you, we're going to finish this interview if it's the last thing I do today. It's technology. It can sometimes be the greatest thing on the planet. Sometimes can be the worst thing on the planet. It's unfortunate that we keep zapping in and out, but I can promise you that when this is done, it'll be a very good interview, very insightful. I think Daniel has a lot to offer as far as his vision and what he's doing in the world. And I'm excited to share that. And I'm hoping that within the next 5 seconds here, he's going to pop back on so I don't have to sit here weird looking at myself talking onto a screen with nobody to interview. That's why I'm not a solo artist. There you are, brother. You're coming back. I think you're back.
I'm back, bro.
I don't see you, but I hear you. So we'll take that. When you started fighting, did you go straight from amateurs to being paid in the pro circuit, or did you go into the underground? And he's out. It's the problem with doing a live show sometimes. Sometimes it's smooth sailing. Other times, not so much. But we're going to get this thing done. I promise you that. I'm hoping we can do this over the next minute or two and just sort of at least take advantage of whatever time we can get in and then finish this baby up. I think it's one brand new track territory for me. For everybody that's watching, thank you. I know that you didn't tune in to see me do a solo show. So we will get Daniel back on hopefully here.
Hey, man.
Yeah, we're still not getting any audio, pal. Or
nothing?
Any video. I still got your audio, though.
How about now?
No video, but still audio. So we can at least keep audio. That's fine, at least for the show. So at least I have somebody talking back to me. I guess South Florida doesn't have the greatest internet service. Hopefully, we will be back on very soon. Don't leave. Don't go anywhere. If anybody has any questions that they want to ask, there you are, buddy.
There we go. There we go. So I think the game plan was the biggest challenge that I didn't have because nobody ever sat me down. So that's one of the biggest things we do for kids or for corporations, because somebody from the outside can look in and see something that, biggest challenge in life is you don't know what you don't know. And so a lot of people talk out of their ass about what they think they know. And a lot of time they can't back it up. And so it's interesting to be able to see our kids. They're like, oh, I'm going to go play in the NFL. And they're in juvenile hall and they're 17 years old and they got 3 more years left in there.
Right.
So it's just interesting to be able to see like what we're able to show people what's possible and what we know isn't possible at the end of the day. It's crazy to be able to see, what people think that they want versus, what they're really, able to do, and create in their lifetime.
So when you started getting paid to fight in MMA, where were you doing that? Was it an underground circuit you were doing? Or were you doing it with like the WEC or Bellator or where were you doing your fighting at?
No. I was I fought for Strike Force. I fought for Bodog. I fought for X1 in Japan. So I was fighting on NBC. I was fighting on Showtime. I was fighting in Japan. So it was a good gig, like a really good gig on what I was able to do, how I was training, my coaches. I relied a lot on them. I loved what they had me, doing in my life, my commitment, my follow through, and really creating some serious results. And, I was just with Frank Shamrock a few months ago, and I just, I appreciate who he is and, as a human, and he really gave me a lot of value in my life. And so I'm just super blessed.
So were they guys like Frank Shamrock and the early adopters of, from the tough man competitions into UFC, those guys, did they give you the plan to become successful as a professional fighter? Or did you have somebody to say, listen, kid, this is how you make it to where you're not just the guy that's, 15th on the top 15 list of fighters at this weight class? Like, how do you get yourself to the point where you start to elevate your career and show you that pathway? Did somebody ever do that for you?
No. So they never actually sat me down and devised that game plan. It was more of like hey, you go do this, kid. You're good, bro. You go do this, kid, and, go train your butt off and you'll be good at this someday. And so it was never that, it's crazy to be able to look back now and I'm like, how did I even get to where I was at when I didn't even have a plan for my life? It's to me, it's insane to be able to see what was, what I did and what was, expected and what I wasn't even training for.
Right. So you went from MMA to wrestling, which is, and I know a couple guys that were in professional wrestling, and I know it's I know my buddy's the strength coach for WWE now down at the NXT down in Orlando. And so I know the training they go through. I know the discipline that's required to get your body prepared to go do what wrestlers do. But a lot of MMA guys they don't look at that like it's the same as MMA. Like MMA, you're busting dudes' heads open on purpose. WWE and that's a little bit more of a theatrical athletic performance versus straight brawling. So when you made that, what made you decide to go that route?
So I tried out for Tough Enough. It was always something that was really cool. I love the entertainment aspect of it. I love the athleticism. Obviously, I was an amateur wrestler. And tried out for Tough Enough, transformed who I was, went from brown hair to blonde hair, went from no abs to abs, went from pasty white to brown. So it was interesting on the transformation within about 6 weeks, and really how I wrapped my mind around committing 100% to something. And so I thought about what I want to create. I really created an intention of being an amazing performer, which most MMA fighters are not performers. I mean, they are more and more today, but back then they weren't. And I looked at myself as, hey, I'm a good athlete, but I have a huge heart. And so I push harder than most athletes. And so I could, there's a difference between like being the tough guy in the gym versus being the tough guy, when it really comes down to it in the cage. And I was able to pull every ounce of what I had out and put it into both. I think I trained smarter than most guys. I got crap over it back in the day, but now that's how they train because I knew my body, I knew my limits. And a lot of the other guys would just, push it because their coach told them to push it. They weren't listening to their bodies. They weren't listening to their minds on what they needed for some downtime or some rest. So I think I was above in front of the curve on a lot of that stuff.
So you win the Tough Enough Challenge, right? That's $1 million purse or a contract with WWE. Now, how did that play out after you won Tough Enough?
Amazing. I was training hard. Went to developmental. Wanted to get trained for more time because I was looking at these guys were doing this for 10 years and then they got up to TV. So really creating that, the promos and really spending the time on this, that's what I needed. I knew that I needed the right coaches, the right mentorship, the right platform on doing this stuff was one of the keys. And so I had some coaches that were outside WWE. I had some mentorship, and I got results really quick. They offered me a crappy deal at the end of the first year, and I turned them down. And so it was more around. It wasn't that I didn't want to be there. It was specifically around that they weren't honoring their agreement in the beginning, and that's fine. And I wanted to choose to go back because the money that they wanted to pay for my body to get torn up wasn't, for me, it wasn't enough to get my body torn up. And so, and also what was interesting is it was $250,000 a year for a 4-year deal. And so I'm looking at also what is the perception when the public finds out that I got offered and took a crappy deal for what I'm worth in the industry. So I looked at a couple different aspects and I really put some things together, and I'm like, you know what? To me, it's not worth it anymore. I'm going to go back to MMA and fight. And I had a great career.
So when did you finally decide to go the entrepreneurial route and leave fighting behind you?
So in 2010, on 2008, I helped my second dad start a company. I was doing that a little bit. No, actually, I take that back. That was 2009, something like that. No, it was 2010. 2010, 2011, towards 2010, 2011. I helped him start a company up, and I was doing some consulting for him. And then in 2010, we started the nonprofit. So I started going around to schools, impacting lives. And, we did that for a good solid 5-6 years. And then I was looking at it, I'm like, we're not getting anywhere. Like, we're not actually shifting. Like, we're getting some good results with individual kids. We're getting some good results with educators and cops. But we're not getting real long-term. Like, we're not changing the system. Like, I have to keep coming back every year to do this. If we change the system, I don't have to come back every year. Like, I think that motivational speakers are awesome. But at the end of the day, to be able to keep coming back, if it's a systematic problem that we have that's built on policy and law. And so we're not changing that for our kids. If we're not going to be able to keep up and change that, then what are we really doing?
Yeah, I had my frustrations with the education system, period. I was growing up, I had a photographic memory, so I could memorize everything I read, every picture I saw, every word that was said to me, and dump it for a test and forget it. and I didn't have to work hard for that. So I never really had to struggle to get great grades. I got an appointment to the U.S. Coast Guard Academy between my junior and senior year, and I got scared shitless about that because I knew that I was flawed in my academics in that I didn't really remember things. I didn't know a lot. I struggled with math. I struggled with understanding, trigonometry and calculus, and I knew that I knew just enough to blast the test and get it out, but I didn't really remember any of it. So I didn't go because I didn't want to be exposed as a fraud. And I didn't realize that when I enlisted in the Army to go become a decoder for the United States Army Intelligence, that I was going to have to do all the stuff that I sucked at doing that. And I was exposed as a fraud. And I had to go to like remedial help, which I've never had to do in my entire life, to learn how to unlock my brain, the analytical side of my brain, because I never had to access it. I never had anybody teach me how to do it. I was able to get by remembering, dumping, and forgetting. So the system itself didn't help me because I was able to fake it until I made it. And today it's even worse with the standardized testing and all the requirements that schools have in order to get funding, that it frustrates me that we're still, even though it's education has evolved, still the issues are still the same. Kids are just remembering information to dump it out on a test and then forget it and move on to the next thing. And I just don't think we're giving our kids enough of a leg up going into the world. And that's part of my mission with mentoring kids is if I can't get into schools and make an impact like you're doing with your institutes, but you're absolutely right when you're saying you're going in there and having to keep coming back, it's not helping anything. So I just work with kids individually because it's the only way I know that I can stay impactful and not feel like I'm going to get frustrated down the road. I think that, to wrap up the interview we'll get about 5 more minutes. I really think it's important though, that people see, I mean, everybody, obviously the MMA and the WWE, that's all fascinating, but quite frankly, it's not really who you are today. It's a piece of how you got here. And I think you learned lessons along the way to get to the point where you're now taking all that wisdom and learning and trial and tribulation and overcoming and recognizing who you are and what your strengths and weaknesses are. And you build a system that allows kids to learn from that and train the trainer program so that you have people that are out there. So Daniel doesn't have to be the only disciple out there doing this. You're training other people to go out and do that. And I think that's the thing that's public schools and private schools and charter schools need to realize that not just because an outsider is coming in doesn't make them the enemy. That you can have smart programs come in from the outside as an asset, not something that makes you look like you're doing something wrong.
And that's not how the system is built.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So if they're paid X amount of dollars and they have the master's or PhD, and some guy comes in like me who doesn't have a college degree, I have an AA, but a 4-year degree, master, PhD, and I can outperform them, then their ego then goes, well, who am I? Because they've never studied who they are as human. They just learned book content. And the second part is then they start going, wow, what's my worth? This guy's going to take my job. Number one, I don't want their job. I just want to add value to them. It's super simple. I want to help them be able to do what they can do better. And so it's interesting, the reason why we went to building our own schools is, and we even have, on Monday, we have people from the DOE coming in. In 2 weeks, we have people coming from our accreditation, from Advanced Ed for our corporate accreditation. It's so amazing to have these people come in because I'm learning so much from them. And then I'm like, wow, what if we take my world, mix it with your world, and we create amazing humans, and we create, systems to be able to then create more amazing humans. It's a win-win for everybody. And so, like DOE said a couple weeks ago, hey, we're going to come visit your school. I'm like, heck yeah. Some of my team, a couple of them were like, oh no, that's not good. I'm like, no, it's the best thing in the world. Because number one, it takes us and it makes us accountable. Number two, now we can say we've had an audit by the DOE. 3, I want to learn from the DOE. Like, I want to learn what are best practices. How are they doing things certain ways? So it's interesting on how people can have that fear-based a little bit still too in my team. And they've gone through a lot of training versus, what I've been able to figure out and what we've been able to create together to to be able to get some awesome results.
I think it's brilliant. I think if anybody that's able to penetrate the castle walls of the public education system and the education system in general, I think is hats off to you. I've tried my ass off for the last 7 years, and I'm a brawn and muscle kind of guy. I want to smash the door down. Sometimes you got to be smarter. And, I've found ways to be a little bit more strategic and use my intelligence background and my problem solving background and my investigative background to allow me to have impact without actually being the person that's at the front of the class. And I've found that's helping me become a better facilitator, a better impactor. And I think that's basically what you did. You found the opening, you found the need, and you created your own pathway that went around, did an end around rather than trying to go through the school. And I spent years trying to go through the school.
Yeah. I was willing to push through, but it still wasn't getting me anywhere after, 5-6 years. So it's like, hey, let's figure something else out to be able to create the result that we want. It's like any entrepreneur, social entrepreneur is like, how do we solve a problem? Not just, keep going in a circle. And so I think the whole system is going in a circle until somebody like me and you and other people come together to show them what's possible as a systematic solution to what we need to create. I mean, you got Elon Musk sending more jets or more rockets to outer space right now than in probably the last year than in the whole world's history. We're making solar cells that are powering houses and, cars that are driving themselves. I mean, this stuff 40 years ago was like, way out of the box, right? Like, I mean, so it's interesting to see how fast somebody I would say, if you can see it, then you can be it. And so a lot of people, they can't necessarily see something. So they're not dreamers. They love to do their job, which is great. I love partners that love to do what they love to do. And I love to dream. I love to be able to see what's possible. And I love to be able to share that with my team so that we can all have a vision together.
It's awesome, brother. It's a great way to end the show. I think it was a great final segment. I think we learned a lot. I think you shared a lot. I think what you're doing is amazing. I appreciate you taking the time. I know you're busy. I know you've been all over from India to New York to Dr. Oz to you name it. And I appreciate you making the time.
Thank you.
And it was fun. And I'm sure we'll connect again down the road.
Appreciate it, brother. We're going to be doing some stuff up in your neck of the woods. So let's get together soon.
Absolutely. Everybody, thank you for watching another episode of the 2 Dates and a Dash podcast. I'm your host, Matt Cubbler. Thank you again to my special guest, Daniel Puder. God bless everybody. Have a great night. Happy birthday to my beautiful wife, Lauren, and go out and be kind to one another. Take care.